Okay, so we're going to look at comparing interest rates now. So there's two terms that you need to become familiar with: nominal and effective interest rates. So nominal interest rates are what you've been dealing with so far. So when it is your stated, a bank tells you, it's 5% per annum, your interest rate, that's a nominal rate. Okay, it's the advertised or stated rate that you use. The effective interest rate is what you actually end up paying. Now, this has to do with compound interest, most definitely. And the biggest thing to know about the effective interest rate is it actually depends on the number of rests. So that means the number of times it compounds in a year. Okay, so that's the N in the compound interest formula. The more rests, the actual higher that rate becomes. So you could imagine that if you made an investment, so the higher that interest rate, the more interest. So if you made an investment, it's actually better for you to have more compounding periods in a year, so for it to compound quarterly instead of just yearly, because you will actually end up with a slightly higher interest rate, effective interest rate. If you are borrowing money, though, it's actually better for it to compound as least number of times in a year as possible. So once a year it would be best, but the less times, the lower or closer to your nominal rate you will actually pay. Okay, so I'm just going to go through a quick example. So we want to look at... yeah, and I'm actually going to have to get rid of this stuff. So I'll just clear this off and get the example up. Okay, so we're looking at working out the effective interest rate for an investment that is earning 14% compounding monthly. Now, to work out the effective interest rate, we don't actually even need a principal or anything like that. What we do is we work out the interest rate on $100 for 1 year. Okay, always. So when you're working effective interest rate, you use $100 in 1 year, and you'll see when we get to the end, it's because it allows us to, the amount of interest that you make is equal to the percentage amount of the effective interest rate. So that means our rate is 14%. And our number of rests is monthly, so that's 12 times in a year. Okay? So first thing, we write our compound interest formula. Okay, then we sub in what we know. So basically, our principal is going to be 100 every time. Our rate is 14. Our number of rests, 12, and then up here n is 12, time is 1. So we can simplify that down. Let's make this 1 plus 14 over 1200 to the power of 12. Now basically I'm going to put that all into my calculator. I'm going to go 14 divided by 1200 plus 1 equals, and when I have that answer I'm going to put it to the power of 12. Once I put it to the power of 12, I can then multiply by 100. I don't think I need to keep doing all of those steps for you. So once I calculate that all out, I end up with 114.934229, and it keeps going. So we're going to make that sorry, I put too many ones, haven't I? 14.93. We'll just round to 2 decimal places. I'll make sure I indicate that with my communication. So basically then, I work out my interest is actually going to be, sorry, that was 114. Don't know where my head is at. 114. Is my amount take the principal? Now the amount that I've just worked out is 114.93, and then you can see if I take off my $100 principal, then I've got 14.93. That's where I got unstuck. And what this means is that this is our effective interest rate. So, therefore, your interest over a year on $100 is $14.93. So, the effective rate is 14.93%. About. It's approximately, because we did have to round here. So approximately 14.93% is the actual interest rate. So the nominal interest rate, 14%. Effective or actual interest rate is 14.93%. So for an investment, that's pretty good. So having that 12, as you can see, made this number 1200, made this 12. If that was only a 1, that would leave this number as 100, that would leave this number as 1, and you could see that it would be a much smaller number and one much closer to 14%. In fact, if it was a 1, it would be 14%. But those number of compounding periods makes a real difference. Okay, so make sure that you are able to tell the difference between a nominal and an effective interest rate, and ensure that you know how to find an effective interest rate. So remembering that it is still following our compound interest formula. We just need to use $100 as the principal and 1 year as time, because it is the number of rests that will indicate how close to the nominal nominal interest rate the effective rate is.